Chemical rain hissed against Ren's tactical jacket as he navigated through Nexus Point's forgotten industrial zone. Night patrol through Sector 4 was unnervingly silent, the kind of quiet that made his combat instincts scream danger. A distant scream confirmed his suspicions. Cutting beneath a malfunctioning holo advertisement, he slipped down a maintenance passage. The alley reeked of synthetic petrochemicals that municipal scrubbers hadn't touched in years. He spotted them, 3 refinery workers cornering someone against the wall. A woman with skin the color of twilight skies, obsidian hair woven into intricate braids, and eyes like distant nebulae. Unmistakably cerulean, a rarity in this sector. One worker grabbed her wrist. The bounty on unregistered aliens just doubled. You'll fetch a nice price. The blue-skinned woman pivoted with liquid grace, twisting the attacker's arm until a sickening crack echoed. I am not merchandise, she stated with deadly calm. The second worker lunged with a vibroblade. She moved with preternatural speed, but couldn't evade both remaining attackers as the third pulled a neural disruptor. Ren stepped from the shadows. That's enough. The blade-wielding worker whirled around. This isn't your business. Ren's fist connected with the man's jaw with precision. The third attacker glanced at his fallen companions and wisely disappeared into the warren of side passages. The cerulean woman's luminous eyes fixed on Ren with assessment. I didn't solicit assistance, she said, her accent giving her words a musical quality. Ren's mouth quirked. I've never been accused of arriving when wanted. She dabbed at a thin line of indigo blood on her lower lip. Security division. Something approximating that, Ren replied, scanning her for injuries. Her eyes narrowed. Predictable. Your kind materializes exclusively when situations descend into chaos. And yours avoids registering with arrival control, he countered, noticing her slight favoring of her left side. You're injured. An erroneous assessment, she replied, but her balance shifted as she took a step. When he reached to stabilize her, she recoiled. Do not make contact. He withdrew immediately. The wound requires attention. I've endured significantly worse, she insisted, straightening with effort. Your unit designation? He asked, glancing for signs of official cerulean escorts. She looked away. I operate independently. No identification transponder, no diplomatic clearance. Ren's voice shifted to something more authoritative. You're undocumented within Nexus jurisdiction. She turned, her gaze holding dangerous promise. A small crystalline implant at her temple caught the light. Modified, illegal. Do you intend to report my presence to your superiors? No, he said simply. I'm escorting you to secure quarters. She flinched almost imperceptibly. You possess a remarkable imagination if you believe I would entrust my safety to a human stranger. Consider the alternatives, Ren replied, already walking away. Medical facilities require identification. Public accommodations are monitored, and those refinery workers have companions. She remained motionless, weighing options. Then her footsteps whispered behind him, nearly silent despite her injury. Not because she trusted him, but because pragmatism demanded it. His enhanced hearing caught her whispered words. Stars guide me through this folly. Ren's quarters occupied the upper level of an abandoned atmospheric calibration station. The reinforced door required 3 distinct security protocols to disengage. The cerulean woman surveyed every centimeter with methodical precision, evaluating exits, defensive positions, and potential weaponry. His living space contained only functional necessities, a reinforced sleep platform, an industrial sink, a wall of surveillance monitors. A thermal regulator lay atop a storage container marked with military insignia. This is how you exist? She asked, unable to mask her dismay. Superior to standard barracks accommodations, he replied with unexpected humor. There are clean filtration systems and actual privacy. She remained standing, arms crossed, watching his every movement. Ren accessed a concealed compartment, extracted a sealed nutrition packet and purified water. He tossed both items to her without warning. She caught them effortlessly. Do you possess an actual name? He asked, removing his rain-dampened gear. Is that relevant to our temporary arrangement? Her eyes flickered to the weapons rack visible through the partially open storage locker. I find addressing shadows inefficient. She examined the nutrition packet before breaking the seal with her teeth. Nix. Like darkness, he observed. A flicker of surprise crossed her features. You know Old Earth languages? I know many things people assume I don't. Aren't you curious regarding my unauthorized presence? She asked. Why your authorities would terminate me without interrogation? I assumed you'd explain when motivated to do so. You're decidedly unusual, she observed between cautious bites. She winced, pain asserting dominance now that adrenaline had subsided. Her hand moved to her side, where a dark stain was spreading. Sit, Ren gestured toward the sleep platform. That injury requires assessment. I'm perfectly capable. You're favoring your dominant side and leaving blood droplets on my floor. She cut herself off as he approached cautiously. May I? I was a field medic before. Other assignments. Nix hesitated but relented. She remained tense as his fingers gently pulled the material aside, revealing an alarming contusion spreading across her rib cage, deepening to midnight against her azure skin. The wound appeared to be a chemical burn overlaying an impact injury. Ren knelt, examining the injury without direct contact. Fractured ribs possibly, and chemical exposure. Enforcement-grade incapacitant. Your diagnostic abilities are impressive for someone without medical credentials, she observed dryly. I've both received and treated similar injuries. Medical facilities are non-negotiable, she stated. Excessive pride or problematic history. Both constitute understatements. He didn't press further. You can remain here temporarily. I have stabilizing agents. What compensation do you expect? Nix asked, suspicion evident. No one offers sanctuary without expectations. His gaze met hers directly. Nothing? Everyone demands something in return. You're armed, he pointed out with humor, nodding toward the slight bulge at her ankle. I prefer to maintain all my original anatomical components. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite amusement, but the momentary suspension of hostility. She crossed the room and deposited her outer garment atop the storage container, revealing a form-fitting undersuit of unfamiliar material. One standard rotation, she declared. Acceptable parameters. She lowered herself onto the sleep platform with careful movements. Ren handed her the thermal regulator and retreated. Her eyes followed his movements. Do you terminate sentient beings professionally, Ren? She asked suddenly. He paused. When sufficiently incentivized. Have you ever eliminated members of my species? Not those who demonstrated intellectual curiosity. The barest suggestion of a smile ghosted across her features. She reclined cautiously, eyes closing briefly before reopening. They existed in mutual silence for nearly an hour. Ren hadn't slept. He maintained his position against the opposite wall, eyes seemingly half closed but missing nothing. Nix stirred on the platform, one arm protectively across her abdomen, while the other twitched as consciousness reasserted itself. She sat up quickly, then regarded him. You attempted nothing while I was vulnerable. Would that have been preferable? I rarely achieve unconsciousness in unfamiliar environments. A sensible adaptation. Nix stood with measured caution, no longer concealing her discomfort. The contusion beneath her ribs had intensified against her azure complexion. Ren rose and moved toward his equipment cabinet. I possess stabilizer nanogel. It won't accelerate healing, but it will prevent structural compromise if you're forced to defend yourself again. She observed him warily. I don't typically accept unverified chemical compounds from strangers. He extended the clearly labeled medical container. Your prerogative. She accepted it without acknowledgement, turning it over in her hands before application. Ren checked the district's security grid status. The communications blackout remained in effect. No transmissions, no patrol notifications. Containment protocols activated. He glanced at Nix, who was methodically circling his quarters, fingers gliding over the damaged monitors, the tactical gear secured in his locker. Cataloging my possessions or planning your exit strategy? He inquired. She turned, her extraordinary eyes fixing on his. You're military adjacent. You execute my species systematically. Your continued respiration suggests exceptions exist. Temporary anomalies, she countered, her fingers tracing a campaign medal partly visible in his locker. the Cerulean Conflict Distinguished Service Cross. Ren traversed the distance between them. You enter my secure location, utilize my resources, consume my provisions, then imply genocidal intent? I didn't infiltrate, she replied with infuriating composure. You facilitated access willingly. You're not merely evading authorities, he said quietly. You're concealing yourself from something significantly more dangerous than standard enforcement. Nix's jawline tensed. Then she reached for his security locker, accessing it without permission. Inside, weapons, mission markers etched into the metal housing. She traced one finger along a particle disruptor. Do you experience psychological withdrawal? She asked unexpectedly. From what specifically? Sanctioned violence. Her eyes met his, challenging. Ren remained silent. Nix approached him, close enough now that he could detect her scent, something like ozone in crystallized honey. Do you feel purposeless now? Her voice lowered. Now that you aren't compensated for efficiently terminating sentient beings? Ren's hand rose with unexpected gentleness. His fingers brushed her braids aside, his knuckles grazing her jaw. I don't require financial incentive to make lasting impressions. Is this your demonstration? She challenged. No, he murmured, leaning closer. This constitutes a demonstration. He kissed her. She neither resisted nor withdrew, her initial stillness giving way to response. Her hands pressed against his chest, then clutched his garment, then gripped him with unexpected intensity. She maneuvered him backward until his shoulders met the wall. Her mouth claimed his with an intensity suggesting long-denied desire. Ren's hands found her waist, fingers tracing the curve of her hips. Heat ignited between them, breathing patterns synchronizing. She made a sound, something primal and unguarded. He whispered against her lips, "Still question my usefulness?" Nix's response was a dangerous rumble from deep in her throat. Her fingers pulled at his clothing, then worked at his fasteners, then halted abruptly. Her forehead pressed against his, respiration irregular. I should despise everything you represent, she whispered, yet you don't. His thumb traced her lower lip. I've tried, without success. Then her lips found his again, slower but more hazardous. When they finally separated, she pressed her forehead to his and whispered, What have you done to me? He smiled enigmatically. You'll discover that reality when you attempt vertical locomotion. Morning arrived with oppressive heat. Nix cursed in her native language, the syllables flowing like liquid crystal. Ren was already upright, his back turned, pulling on a thermal undergarment. His bare shoulders shifted with efficient movement. She observed him for precisely 2 seconds too long. Celestial bodies, she muttered again, attempting to rise. Her legs faltered when she stood. She braced herself against the platform's edge, genuine surprise registering on her face. Ren didn't turn. I provided advance notification. I underestimated. You disregarded intelligence, he corrected with humor. Nix straightened gradually, grimacing. Various anatomical regions registered complaints. I can't even stand properly, she muttered under her breath. My auditory processing remains fully functional. She directed a withering glare at his back. This situation lacks amusing qualities. I'm not expressing amusement, but the slight shake of his shoulders betrayed him. Ren finally turned, unmistakable self-satisfaction lurking beneath his stubbled features. The morning light illuminated him differently. Not the dangerous stranger from the alley, but something more complex. The tension transcended physical discomfort now. Nix redirected her gaze. That interaction contradicted established behavioral parameters. I don't typically engage this way. Ren moved closer. You didn't grant permission. You claimed what you desired. Color rose in her cheeks. Do you intend to report unauthorized alien contact now? His mouth curved slightly. Such action seems counterproductive when you demonstrate mobility impairment. She lowered herself back onto the platform, massaging her temple as though her professional dignity constituted the only casualty. I find your existence objectionable, she stated without conviction. Evidence suggests otherwise. I maintain theoretical objections. Theory frequently collapses when confronted with practical application. What subsequent actions do you propose? She asked. I'll prepare nutritional sustenance. You possess culinary skills? Negative, he admitted, but I maintain adequate protein substitute and stimulant tablets. Nix massaged her knee. How extraordinarily romantic. He activated the synthetic food preparation sequence. She observed his movements. You deviate significantly from anticipated parameters, she said unexpectedly. In what manner? You don't conform to military behavioral conditioning. There's something individual beneath your training. I terminated compliance with external directives some time ago. Silence expanded between them. Her voice softened. Last night possessed authenticity. Among my people, physical joining carries significance beyond momentary pleasure, she said quietly. It forms a neural resonance pattern, temporary but lingering. Ren turned, studying her with new interest. You're saying we formed a psychic connection? Nothing so dramatic, she said, a hint of a smile touching her lips. But there is a residual awareness. It's why I can sense your amusement even when your face remains neutral. Fascinating, he said genuinely. Human coupling lacks such sophistication. Nix accepted the food, sampling it before grimacing. This tastes like industrial lubricant, because it primarily consists of industrial compounds with nutritional modifications. She nodded. Still preferable to yesterday's available alternatives. He raised an eyebrow. Expressing dissatisfaction? She fixed him with a pointed stare. I cannot maintain standard vertical positioning without assistance. What conclusion would logical analysis suggest? Ren produced genuine audible amusement, startling them both. By mid-afternoon, the building's internal security sensors exhibited momentary disruption. Ren sat on the floor, calibrating a scanner while Nix paced with measured steps. Your security grid demonstrates unusual activity patterns, she observed. Affirmative, he confirmed. Signal density in this sector also displays irregular fluctuations. They're scanning building by building. Ren stood, approached the console. Indicates potential detection protocols. Could represent significant threats. Nix's posture displayed increased tension, her hand unconsciously moving to her side. Perhaps you should disclose what you're concealing, Ren suggested. Nix met his gaze, then slowly rotated her neck as though preparing for impact. My departure from authorized locations wasn't merely about human territorial restrictions, she admitted. I was designated as part of a biological contract, she said with clinical detachment. One of the selected. Selected for what specific purpose? Her eyes flashed. For reproductive contribution. Ren's jaw muscles contracted. You're communicating factual information? I was promised to a command sovereign from my territorial division, she continued, for cross-species genetic advancement initiatives. They're developing hybrid offensive capabilities? They're asserting ownership rights over autonomous biological entities, she corrected. The specific scientific outcome represents secondary consideration. The primary goal is control, ownership of female bodies, particularly those with rare genetic markers. Did you provide informed consent? I consented to continued biological functions, she said bitterly, until the ethical compromise exceeded acceptable parameters. She partially elevated her garment and rotated, exposing her dorsal region. The blue skin there was marred by precise scars. That location contains my designation marker. Neural implant, subcutaneous positioning. Ren approached, examined the area. His finger lightly traced the base of her spinal column, causing her to shiver. Located. The anomaly appeared insignificant, just a subtle discoloration beneath her azure epidermis. You're being monitored through advanced tracking protocols, he stated. Nix tensed. I disabled my transponder 27 days ago. This doesn't represent standard transponder technology. This constitutes passive tracking architecture, minimal power requirements, dormant until externally activated. Ren retrieved his specialized toolkit. I'll extract it immediately. Without chemical neural blockers? Time constraints prohibit standard medical protocols. He met her eyes. This will hurt, but I suspect you've endured worse. Nix positioned herself at the platform's edge. Proceed. Ren sterilized the extraction implement. This will generate uncomfortable sensory feedback. I've endured significantly more severe physical trauma. The implement contacted dermal tissue. Nix inhaled sharply but maintained perfect stillness. Ren worked with precision. He located the device, smaller than his smallest finger digit, obsidian nanoglass encased in biomolecular film. He extracted it, sealed the wound site, then displayed it before her. Your control mechanism, he said, disgust evident in his tone. Primitive, but effective. Nix crushed it between her fingertips. Microscopic energy discharge flared and extinguished against her palm. I feel lighter, she admitted. Whoever installed this marker is already mobilizing retrieval assets, he said. That device transmitted emergency protocols when extracted. They now know exactly where you are. What operational time frame remains before interception? Insufficient for standard evacuation procedures. 30 minutes, perhaps less. She stood with deliberate control, her positioning transformed to combat readiness. I don't retreat from confrontation without strategic necessity. Neither do I, Ren replied, but we cannot establish tactical advantage in this location. He moved to a hidden panel, retrieved a cache of weapons, and provided her with a disruptor. She accepted it without hesitation, checking its charge with practiced efficiency. Then we implement immediate tactical relocation, she said with authority. They accessed the service passage behind the atmospheric station minutes later. What destination parameters have you established? She inquired. District 9 infrastructure tunnels, Ren replied grimly. Legacy power distribution architecture. I've established an off-grid security position within that framework. The dead zone? Surprise registered in her voice. Even enforcement avoids those tunnels. The radiation levels are exaggerated to keep civilians away, he finished. The real danger is structural instability, but I've mapped the safe pathways. They reached the termination point of the current passage. A surveillance drone passed overhead. They froze beneath a corroded architectural support. Nix's body tensed against his. They're implementing communications disruption protocols, she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. They're operating in our immediate vicinity. She activated her weapon. Her physical movements now reflected advanced tactical training. Ren positioned himself closer. You maintain operational commitment? He asked. Her eyes displayed intensity. You won't disconnect me from my freedom so easily. One directional adjustment, one security barrier neutralized, and they disappeared into the shadows of District 9's forgotten underworld. The tunnels stretched before them like the throat of some ancient beast. Ren guided them through a structurally compromised maintenance tunnel. Condensation accumulated on vertical surfaces. Illumination systems flickered, failed, forcing them to rely on Ren's tactical equipment. Have you previously navigated this specific infrastructure? She inquired. Affirmative, Ren responded. Approximately 213 days ago, during the uprising in Section 7. She halted without warning. You were involved in the Liberation Front conflict? That's classified information, he replied automatically, then softened. But yes, not in the capacity you might think. You weren't part of the suppression force? I was sent to be, he admitted. I made a different choice. She studied him with new appreciation. The mysterious sabotage of the containment protocols? That was your doing? Ren's silence was confirmation enough. Her hand contacted his chest. You communicate as though you've accessed my experiences firsthand. Perhaps I understand more than you've told me. You haven't achieved such penetration of my defenses through mere observation. Ren placed his hand over hers where it rested against his chest. I comprehend what it means to be used as a strategic resource, to be seen as property rather than person, to simulate loyalty just long enough to completely dismantle the system that sought to own you. Her fingers contracted slightly against his chest. Then footsteps echoed behind their position. She disengaged contact, tension reconfiguring her body into combat readiness. Ren identified a lateral passage and directed her behind a collapsed structural support. A patrol unit passed. 2 cerulean enforcement operatives, enhanced physical parameters, advanced weapon systems, sensory visors conducting systematic environmental analysis. Tactical situation deteriorating, Ren whispered once the patrol had passed. They possess my biochemical signature profile, Nix whispered. The tracking architecture you extracted. They likely established complete biometric recording before system neutralization. So they're implementing specific target acquisition, he summarized, and they'll neutralize all proximate entities to flush primary objectives. Including you, she added, concern flickering in her eyes. Nix swallowed visibly, her hand unconsciously seeking his in the darkness. We need to implement immediate course deviation. There's an overflow channel intersecting the primary coolant distribution network. My species previously utilized that location for reconnaissance equipment storage. They move quickly. He maintained point position. She displayed evidence of previous injuries returning, limping slightly. He halted their progress. You cannot maintain current mobility requirements with existing damage. I retain sufficient operational capacity, she insisted. Your protective garment displays evidence of renewed bleeding. Ren positioned his arm beneath hers without asking. She demonstrated minimal resistance before acquiescing. You're experiencing satisfaction from this tactical necessity, she accused. Simply prioritizing mission-critical resource preservation, he replied with a smile. Though having you against me is not unpleasant. They navigated through a structurally compromised metal barrier and accessed the coolant distribution tunnel, ankle-deep in stagnant water. If consciousness termination occurs, I will abandon you at current coordinates, he stated, though they both knew the lie for what it was. You wouldn't implement such tactical withdrawal. You've established this certainty based on what evidence? Her head tilted, bringing her face close to his. Her lips accidentally brushed his jaw. Her voice softened. Temporal opportunity for tactical disengagement has expired, human. You made your choice in that alley. The tunnel expanded into a hemispherical space, previously a signal relay station. They established position within the perimeter. Implement immediate rest protocols, Ren instructed, lowering her gently. She collapsed onto a storage container, breathing labored. Her side displayed significant bleeding. Ren accessed his emergency medical resources. Remove external protective covering, he said. You first, Nix challenged with unexpected humor. She removed her outer garment. Her torso shimmered under the fractured illumination. Smooth azure skin displaying evidence of multiple impact trauma. Ren knelt, implementing medical protocols. She never displayed pain response, though he knew the process must be excruciating. You'll lose consciousness within minutes if we don't stabilize the bleeding, he stated. You require horizontal positioning and rest. Implement such positioning if tactically justified, she conceded. Ren made direct eye contact, then applied gentle pressure to her shoulder and thigh, carefully guiding her against the storage structure. His touch lingered longer than necessary. Implementation complete, he said softly. Her breathing changed in ways unrelated to physical trauma, her eyes darkening as they held his. We move at secondary atmospheric illumination reduction, he advised reluctantly. Rest while you can. Nix closed her eyes briefly, then reopened them. You represent significant deviation from projected behavioral parameters. Acknowledged. You present increased tactical hazards to my self-control. Ren's lips suggested minimal amusement. You'll recognize the strategic advantages eventually. She laughed, the sound surprisingly delightful in the grim surroundings. She whispered, vertical locomotion remains compromised. Ren maintained observational protocols, watching over her with unexpected protectiveness. He had maintained his position against the wall for about 10 minutes when movement caught his attention. Nix's eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. Your eyes demonstrate micro-movements during simulated unconsciousness, Ren observed. You're dreaming. Nix's lips curved slightly. Not dreaming, remembering. She opened her eyes fully. Perhaps I simply find your protective behaviors worthy of analysis. You aren't implementing concealment protocols anymore, he noted. You're allowing me to see beyond your defenses. Such implementations aren't tactically justified between us now. Ren reactivated sensor array systems. Visual representation indicated nothing beyond interference patterns. You calculate probability of hostile element convergence at this location? She inquired. approaching certainty over extended temporal framework. They'll sweep every tunnel eventually. What operational time frame remains before we must move? He looked over his shoulder, his expression softening. Until you've recovered sufficient strength. I won't risk your safety by rushing. Nix produced a sound indicating appreciation. Your care extends beyond tactical necessity. Ren moved to her position. Implementation of energy conservation protocols recommended. You need rest. Such implementation was progressing until you initiated predatory movement patterns resembling captive apex species, she teased. Those behavioral characteristics register in your observation? Nix rotated to establish lateral support, facing him more directly. Your visual presentation suggests internal conflict between stated tactical objectives and unstated personal desires. Current tactical situation prohibits exploration of alternative objectives, he said. You implemented my extraction from hostile elements despite clear risk to yourself, despite knowing nothing about me. Her voice softened. Tactical justification? Because some choices transcend tactical considerations? Even when such action produces terminal probability increase, some things are worth the risk. You calculate this interaction represents some form of conflict zone pair bonding? She inquired, something vulnerable beneath the clinical phrasing. That neurochemical responses activate through shared danger? Negative, Ren stated gently. I calculate you've experienced pursuit protocols so consistently you've forgotten what it means to be seen, truly seen, as more than a target or an asset. His hand found hers. And I calculate such realization produces significant psychological discomfort. She kissed him without warning, the action containing no tactical justification, only raw emotional need. He established connection at her waist, careful of her injuries. Her legs wrapped around him automatically. She produced an involuntary sound when her injuries protested, but didn't terminate their connection. You communicated tactical situation prohibits alternative objectives, she reminded him between breaths. Tactical assessment error acknowledged, he murmured against her neck. She smiled despite their circumstances. Finally, accurate intelligence processing. The operational console produced electromagnetic discharge, startling them both. When they finally separated, Nix collapsed against him, forehead pressed to his, their breathing synchronized. I don't typically establish complex interpersonal architecture, she whispered. Opportunity for such restriction has expired, Ren stated, brushing a stray tendril of her midnight hair from her face. I'm not establishing trust parameters easily. They develop naturally or not at all. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Then what remains between us? You, he stated simply. She whispered, something softening in her expression. You're mine now, human. And Ren stated with quiet certainty. Such designation occurred the moment you established visual contact in that alley. The emergency notification system activated with jarring suddenness. Ren moved to check it. A transmission burst had registered, indicating movement in nearby tunnels. What tactical situation has developed? Nix asked. Hostile elements approaching current position, he replied. 3 thermal signatures demonstrating rapid movement vectors. She retrieved her outer protection layer, determination replacing vulnerability. Then we implement tactical necessity. Ren loaded ammunition in his primary defensive system. Direct confrontation? Strategic endurance, she corrected with grim satisfaction. We make them regret entering these tunnels. The corridor reeked of corrosion and ancient conflict. Ren and Nix ran, breathing synchronized, pulses hammering, weapons ready. They've accessed the central systems, Ren murmured, grid responding to internal command protocols. They're tracking power usage. They're not pursuing for capture, Nix said. They're coming for elimination. No witnesses, no evidence. Then they should have brought reinforcements, he replied. They reached an intersection. Ren raised his fist. Both froze in perfect synchronization. He crouched, removed a fragment of reflective material, and angled it around the corner. 3 operatives in complete tactical gear, one with a communications module. Military-grade equipment, special operations designation visible on their armor. They're directing operations, Nix whispered. That's a command unit, which suggests additional forces behind them. This is bigger than a simple retrieval. Don't die, he said simply. Not part of my operational parameters, she replied, squeezing his hand. Then she moved. Nix rounded the corner with fluid grace, weapon raised. She fired 3 times before they could respond. One blast struck center mass of the lead operative. Armor sparked but held. The enemy sought cover, shouting into communications devices. Ren attacked. He flanked left and drove a blade directly beneath the first soldier's chin. The strike found the vulnerable connection point between helmet and body armor. The second turned too late. Ren fired twice at point-blank range. The body collapsed heavily. The final soldier, the communications operator, raised his weapon toward Nix. She struck his chest twice with precision shots. He staggered but remained standing. She advanced swiftly, slammed her weapon into his visor, and tore the communications module from his equipment. Ren caught her before she fell, her momentary strength giving way. She was breathing heavily, her knees buckled momentarily before straightening through sheer force of will. Not sustainable if we remain here, he said. Behind them, the communications device activated with a crackle of static. A distorted voice emerged. Unit 2, status confirmation. Verify neutralization. Ren looked at Nix. Can you replicate their speech patterns? She nodded, took the device, adjusted her voice. Lower, harsher. Unit 2 secure. Resistance eliminated. Proceeding to secondary tunnel intercept. There was a pause, then. Acknowledged. Operation continues. Authority Protocol Indigo. The transmission ended. Nix discarded the communications module. We have approximately 10 minutes, perhaps less. They moved deeper into the tunnels. Each corridor narrowed. Then they heard it. Boots. Dozens. They've deployed the entire contingent, Ren said grimly. This isn't just about you anymore. Nix grimaced. They can't risk exposure. What I know about the program, it would destabilize the entire alliance. They're transforming these tunnels into a cleanup operation. Then we transform these tunnels into their nightmare, Ren replied. They located an ancient conduit choke point. Single entry, collapsed ceiling on one side, ruptured coolant line releasing mist into the space. Limited visibility, perfect trap. They positioned explosive devices. Nix took position high, concealed behind storage containers. Ren waited just within visual range, deliberately exposing himself as bait. Be careful, she whispered as they separated. Always am, he replied, their eyes meeting in silent communication. And then the boots approached. First 2, then 5, then more. Ren waited with practiced patience until the first crossed the trigger mechanism. The explosion illuminated the tunnel in orange fury. Fire cascaded through the opening. Screams echoed as the front line went down. Then came the weapons fire, disciplined despite the ambush. Nix fired rapidly, precisely. Her hand remained steady even as blood ran down her wrist from recoil. Ren moved like a phantom, appearing and vanishing in the smoke-filled chaos. 2 bodies collapsed from blade strikes, one from a clean shot through the eye shield, another from a blast that removed the helmet entirely. Then a massive shadow loomed through the smoke, an enhanced enforcer, twice normal size, full shield plating. It slammed into Ren with devastating force, knocking him across the tunnel. Ren hit the wall with a sickening impact. Ribs fractured, possibly worse. The enforcer raised his arm, power gauntlet charged, the weapon humming with deadly energy. A single strike would end him. Then Nix screamed, not in fear, but in primal rage. She launched herself from the elevated platform, landed hard, slid across the floor, and fired point blank into the enforcer's chest. It flinched, turned toward this new threat. She didn't retreat. She threw her shoulder into the massive form, blaster pressed to his visor, and fired until the power cell burned out. The body dropped. Nix collapsed on top of it, breathing shallow. Blood soaked her shirt again, the wound reopened by her desperate move. Nix! Ren crawled to her, ignoring his own injuries. Stay with me. I'm fine, she whispered. I got him. You're not fine. You're still alive, aren't you? The hint of a smile touched her lips. Worth it, He pressed a hand to her side. The bleeding was worse now. Fear gripped him. You saved me. You're mine, she whispered, her hand finding his face. I don't share what's mine. Ren pulled her into his arms. From the smoke, two more figures emerged. Ren fired without hesitation. Both dropped where they stood. Then silence, broken only by their ragged breathing. Ren leaned against the wall, cradling her. Nyx's eyes fluttered. You're bleeding too. Guess we're matching. They sat like that for a long time. The corridor was scorched black. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines. The walls were streaked with blood, both human red and cerulean indigo. Ren held her close, one arm around her back, the other pressing a field dressing against the wound at her side. You with me? He asked, fear making his voice rough. Barely, she murmured. Good, because I'm not dragging your stubborn ass through 2 kilometers of pipe again. The joke brought a flicker of response to her eyes. She laughed, though it ended in a wince. You got hit, she whispered, touching the bruise on his ribs. I've had worse. That's not the same as good. Neither is letting you die. His voice broke slightly. He checked the seal on the field dressing. The bleeding had slowed, but she was going to be weak for hours. Ren shifted, pulling her fully into his lap, bracing her back against his chest to share body heat. You're freezing. I'm fine. You always say that when you're not, he replied, tenderness breaking through his professional demeanor. Nyx opened her eyes slowly. I meant what I said. About what? Choosing you. Ren's jaw tightened. I've seen what they do to women like you, he said quietly. On both sides of this conflict. They take your body, your name, your freedom. They call it destiny, alliance, duty. But it's just ownership dressed in medals and protocol. I know. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. And yet you still let me touch you. I didn't let you, she said, a hint of her earlier fire returning. I wanted you. Her fingers curled into his shirt. There's a difference. He kissed her forehead gently. I know. I swear, she muttered. I still can't stand properly. Ren smiled, warmth replacing tactical assessment. You're welcome. She leaned her head back against his shoulder. It's not just the injury. He froze, understanding her meaning. It's what happened between us, what it felt like. She continued softly. Among my people, joining is significant. The neural resonance creates changes. Changes? Concern colored his voice. Nothing detrimental, she assured him, but permanent. I'll always be able to sense you now, at least when you're near. Your emotions, your presence. It's intimate. Is this why you called me yours? Some kind of biological bonding? I've had physical encounters before, she said bluntly, but I've never felt claimed, like my body wasn't just mine anymore, like I wanted to be someone's, and not because I had to be. That's not biology. That's something else. You're not mine, Ren said softly. You're yours. That's why I want you. She turned her head, face inches from his. I'm not giving you back. Wasn't asking. He traced the outline of her face. The last of the tunnel's backup power drained into darkness. Ren shifted, stood slowly, lifting her into his arms despite his own injuries. She didn't resist. He carried her down the corridor past scorched concrete and twisted steel, past the broken bodies of those who had tried to take her back. They reached a service ladder buried under debris. Ren cleared the path with one arm. He didn't stop. Nyx watched him in silence, her arms around his neck. You could have left me in that alley, she said softly. Should have, he replied, though they both knew he didn't mean it. But you didn't. No. You've ruined me for everyone else, you know. He glanced down at her. Same. She kissed his throat, then whispered against his skin, the words carrying the weight of ceremony. Mine. And he whispered back without hesitation. Yours. They reached the top of the ladder. The hatch creaked open, revealing the outer edge of an abandoned comm station. Fresh air rushed in. Safe for now. Ren sat her down gently against the wall. Nyx leaned back. You're shaking. I'm tired. You should rest. Later. She took his hand, held it tightly. No more later. Just now. He looked at her, worn, bloodied, still radiant, still fierce. They moved together. No heat or hunger now, just need for connection. He pulled her into his arms and sat against the wall. She curled into him, blanket over them both. Later, when the sun cracked the sky in weak streaks of gray, she spoke first. What now? He didn't open his eyes. We patch up. We leak the truth about the program. Then we disappear. And us? Ren finally looked at her, everything he couldn't articulate visible in his eyes. There is no me without you anymore. Nix nodded once and said, I can live with that. She reached up, touched his face. In my culture, we have a bonding ritual, not the forced arrangement they planned for me, but something chosen, a sharing of blood and breath. Is that a proposal? He asked. It's an inevitability, she replied. We've already begun it. The ritual would merely acknowledge what already exists. Then yes, he said simply. Whenever you're ready. Somewhere beyond the official perimeter, a relay burst penetrated 5 layers of encryption. The data spike hit every secure terminal inside the central tribunal. Inside the encrypted package, footage, audio logs, coordinates, files with red stamps. Forced bonding initiatives, genetic matching trials, compliance simulations. All the evidence Nix had risked everything to secure. And at the center, a name highlighted in white, Nix Valzor classification. Dissident directive. Recover or eliminate under it, one line burned into the file header. You tried to own her. She chose me instead. No signature. Just panic behind locked doors as decades of secret collaboration unraveled. In the shadows of the outer fringe, Ren and Nix watched the response from an off-grid surveillance hub. She leaned over the console, braid loose down her back, a faint scar curling along her rib where the tracer had been. Ren sat behind her, fixing a rifle with the calm of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Think they'll come again? She asked. Definitely. She didn't flinch. They'll spin it, call us terrorists, say I was compromised. You were, he said wryly. By me. Nix smirked. You're lucky I don't kill you for that. Too late. You already did. He tapped his chest, right over his heart. She turned, studied him. You scared? No. You should be. We burned a whole tier of their command structure. We're fugitives on 2 worlds now. He traced the line of her jaw. You think they scare me after you? She leaned in, hand at his jaw. You keep saying things like that, and I might start believing you? You already do, he said, and kissed her like there was no war left to run from. Later they stood together at the top of a burned-out lookout station. Rain hit the roof in steady sheets. Ren adjusted the scope on the old transmitter. Signals bouncing again. They're jamming us. Let them, Nix said, pulling him away from the equipment. We've already spoken louder than they can erase. She stepped to the edge. The city glittered far beyond the trees, lights refracting through raindrops into countless tiny prisms. I used to think survival meant being the strongest, she said, outlasting everyone, beating the system, winning alone. And now, he asked, now I know survival isn't enough. She turned to him, eyes dark and lit from within. Now I want to live. He took her hand, didn't let go even when thunder cracked overhead. We're not done, she said. Not until this whole system burns. He nodded. Together. Nix smiled. Slow, lethal, perfect in its promise. Always. She pressed her forehead to his, initiating the bonding ritual. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to fight alongside. Ren completed the response as though he'd known it all his life. Yours to guard, yours to honor, yours to stand beside. The rain fell around them, washing away blood and grime, but not the connection that had formed in fire and darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it as one, exure and human, united against a universe that had tried to tear them apart.